people will not want to deal with me. So if I have a lot of money and no status, is there a group of people who are willing to deal with me? Sure, there will be, right? There are people who are willing to take that risk. But at the end of the day, in general, when we look at society and we look how we navigate it, it's important to have these two things, right? I need to have a good reputation and I need to have some money in order to navigate, in order to live. Uh, Falling into excess. So when we had the discussion on israf, what are some things that I personally need to look for to make sure I don't fall into israf? What are some guidelines that we had spoken about before? All right, having that internal gauge, that's definitely part of it. What else? Am I fulfilling my right toward who? Toward Allah? Ahsant, good. And toward others, right? Well, and we'll just say for others in general. It doesn't have to be specifically family. And my internal gauge, meaning that if I go to buy a really nice watch, I want to buy a really nice watch. Uh, Tag just dropped a new one. You know what I mean? I like there's a new Tag Heuer that came out, and I want to go and purchase it. It's a lot of money, but I've paid my zakah, I've paid my sadaqah, and now I have money in my pocket. Can I go and purchase that item? So far, yes. Good. I'm giving my zakat and I'm giving my sadaqah, but I'm not buying food for home. Right? I'm buying the $6 chips. Astaghfirullah. So, I'm sorry. That's like they can have ramen, right? So I'm if oh, what was I saying? I'm not fulfilling their rights. They, what if I'm giving my zakat? What if I'm giving my sadaqah? And my family is content. And my family is content. Can I go and purchase the watch now? Yes, I can. I go into the store. I go to purchase the watch, and my heart is like, oh man, $1,200. I have the money. I'm not taking anybody's rights. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do with Allah, and my family has no complaints. But my heart is like, it's saying no. What should I do at that point? I shouldn't purchase it. But I see a $900 one. It's on sale, $900, and it's actually more attractive. There's not that much difference, right? You're talking like $1,200, $900, but I look at that and all of a sudden I'm like, man, this I can actually, I'm more comfortable wearing. Can I purchase it now? Yes. And what have I not done? I haven't fallen into Islam. Again, I fulfilled Allah's rights, I fulfilled the rights of others, and my internal gauge is completely comfortable and okay with this. So I have not fallen into Islam. So he mentions two situations. He's saying that if an individual seeks excessive wealth or status, what can happen is that he can fall into ghafla, right? He can fall into this heedlessness, and this is a huge problem. But he's saying that if I seek excessive status, right? Because there are two things in excess I can seek. Either I can seek wealth or I can seek status. These are the two things. He's saying that if I go and seek that excessive wealth or I seek that excessive status, what happens is that lure will now pull me in. So it's not enough that I'm falling into it. I'm now falling into that pathway that is leading me into more excess. And the thing that Ghazali does very well is he starts talking about these negative feedback loops that we end up creating in our own hearts. That once I seek wealth and status, what happens? I want to seek more wealth and status. And that more wealth and status, it feeds this insatiable urge, and I want to seek more. And I just get caught up like this. And unfortunately, people who get caught up in this cycle, when do they awaken? When it's too late. Right? So when a person's on their deathbed, they realize like their whole life they've just been running after this wealth and they've been running after the status, only to wake up and realize that essentially it had no value. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. So he talks about seeking wealth versus seeking prestige, and a lot of these things and a lot of these ideas that he shares is attaching it to our hearts. And this is a discussion that we had before. that it's completely reasonable for me to seek wealth because I have to eat, right? I have to survive. I need a place to live. I need clothes to wear. And it's completely reasonable for me to seek status because I want to be respectable in the community. I want people to do business with me. I want people to talk to. I want people to trust in me, right? And there are so many relationships that we all have in our lives, like between friends, between family, between coworkers. Just imagine if we started losing trust in all of those different people. How much more difficult would our lives become? Because now we don't have that support. Like we spent all that time building our reputation and creating those support networks. And why do we create support networks? In case of emergencies, in case we need help, in case we need someone to talk to. Right? Even if I want to go out and spend time, right? I can go on a hike alone, sure, but there's gonna want to come a time where I want to go on a hike with someone. It doesn't matter how good I become at soccer. If there's someone to play with, there's no game. Right? There are times that we are reliant on others, and that's important to keep in mind. And if I want to maintain those relationships, I have to maintain like I have to maintain that reputation and I have to maintain that respect. But these are things that are really important. So he brings and he closes with the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Khulafa Rashidin. Are there any people in our literature that are more respected than them? No. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Khulafa Rashidin. These are the most respected people. And if we understand that they're the most respected people, meaning that Islamically, who has the highest status in our hearts? Number one, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no doubt about that. And because of that status, we love him, we want to emulate him. How did that status affect him? It didn't. How? It did not. It did not. And then his students were who? His best students. Khulafa Rashidin. People who he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Uthman pointed this out to me, he gave them individually what? Glad tidings of paradise. How much more status did they need? How much more praise did they need? Did it change the way that they acted? Not at all. If anything, after the Prophet ﷺ died, what did they feel about themselves? They actually started doubting themselves. Doubt themselves. Umar radiallahu anh, he would ask Hudayfa time and again, he said, As-sammani Rasulullah min al-munafiqin? Did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam name me from the hypocrites? Right. They believed in the Prophet sallallahu, yes? They believed what he said was true. So why did this doubt come? Because they trusted it as long as he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive. In the moment he sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, there's no one for them to turn to or ask if their situation had changed. But ultimately, these people remain good regardless of the praise that have to. And this is what the effect of the lure of status does to people who are righteous. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all righteous. That it doesn't matter what people say to us. It doesn't matter how much money we receive. It doesn't matter how great our reputation is. And it doesn't matter what the people say about us. We will continue practicing the way that we practice. We will continue being truthful the way that we're truthful. We'll continue praying the way that we're praying. We'll continue our honesty and our trustworthiness, regardless if people say it or not. That's how we should be. Sometimes it's hard. It's difficult. We enjoy praise, but that's what this whole discussion is about. How do we avoid that? And why is it so dangerous? And may Allah protect us. So this goes also into a conversation like, okay, well, if I'm not allowed to show off, right, or if I shouldn't show off, doesn't that mean that I shouldn't be presentable? No, right? It doesn't mean that at all. I absolutely should be presentable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says very clearly and very categorically, خُذُوا زِينَتُكُمْ. He says, adorn yourselves. He doesn't say ilbisu, or he doesn't say dress. He says, خُذُوا زِينَتُكُمْ. He says, adorn yourselves, beautify yourselves, عند كل مسجد. Either, and you can understand this one of two ways, every time you stand for worship, or every time you go to the masjid. So I'm now. I'm sorry. Allah. It's an ayah from the Quran. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is telling us that I should adorn myself when I pray or when I go to the masjid. When I'm in a public setting, I should beautify myself. Meaning that there's a presentable standard, right? There's a standard that I can have. He Azza wa Jal, he says what? Go. He goes go above and beyond that. Now, how much above and beyond? Right. That's where we go back to that discussion of excess and what that means. Remember, we had said as long as we fulfill those conditions, then I'm allowed to adorn myself as much as I like, as long as I fulfill those categories, and as long as I fulfill those requirements. Yes. Yes. Allah, others, right? The rights of Allah, the rights of others, and my personal gauge. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "He who has in his heart an ant's weight of arrogance will not enter Jannah." Someone said, "A man likes to wear beautiful clothes and shoes." The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "Allah is beautiful, He loves beauty." Arrogance means ridiculing and rejecting the truth and despising people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from kibr. So what are some benefits we can take from this hadith? That we are allowed to what? We're allowed to dress nicely. Very clear. What else? That dressing nicely is not equivalent to excess. And not just that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I mean, how did the Prophet ﷺ, when he responded to him, how did he respond to him? Did he respond to him like, yeah, that's okay? How did he respond? Right? He encouraged him. He said, not only did he say, you're right, he said what? He said, no, you should do that. These are very important points. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he also defines kibr. Sometimes we misunderstand this. And sometimes, unfortunately, we fall into it too. What is kibr? What is the prophetic definition of arrogance? Rejecting the truth. This is the prophetic definition of arrogance. Rejecting the truth. Why? And why would I reject the truth? Huh? Because of my own arrogance and my ego. Ahsan. Huh? We can higher, better, smarter, whatever the case might be. But the moment the truth comes to me, I am stopping. I'm refusing to reject it because of what I believe about myself. Yes. So when I hate someone, why am I hating them? Jealousy is a possibility. What is another possibility? What if that person hurt me? What if he hurt my family? What if he's hurting other Muslims? What if he's hurting other people? That's not what it means here. Because despising people means which people? Do you think the arrogant person cares if he's stealing or he's lying or he's cheating or he's honest or he's trustworthy? Do you think he cares? Who is he despising? Huh? Right? The one who brings truth, for sure. He doesn't care. He just despises people. He looks at everyone like they're lowly. He doesn't care because he thinks that much of himself. It's not that. I have every right to hate whoever I want. Right? There's no, but there's a difference between hating people and hating an individual. Yes. You had your hand up? No. Yes. Okay, I'll come back to you. Oh, hold on. Yeah, sure. So I don't think this is a hadith, but it is a saying. Um, don't hate people, hate the sin. Sometimes it's difficult to separate the two, right? So if somebody lies to me, it's definitely possible I hate the person who lies. What about murder? Somebody murders a loved one. becomes a lot, you know what I mean? It becomes a lot more challenging to separate cases of rape, um, and not just stealing. If somebody just comes and just takes my home, right? So I think there are individual cases where it becomes very easy to compartmentalize and kind of separate and be like, okay, yeah, this person's wrong. I get it. I hate the action. But sometimes, because of how deeply it affects us, it's very difficult to separate between the two. And there's nothing wrong with hating that person. What are we not allowed to do? We're not allowed to oppress people. We're not allowed to harm others, right? Hating is not. It's you know what I mean. It's in my spectrum. I'm allowed to do that. Hold on. Don't hate the person. Hate the sin. Yes. Yes. All right. Let me come back. Yes. No. I mean, you don't have to. So, am I obligated to know the context of every single person that hurt me? It's like, oh, well, he just came and he completely, he came and he sued you and he took your home and he kicked you and your family out because he had his own family. Man, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are certain things like I just I don't care. Like, you took something that was not yours, right? Or you took advantage of me in a way that was not permissible. Yeah. So like, I again, I don't hating individuals. Is it ideal? Is it good for our hearts? No, it's not. But at the same time, I can't say no. You can't. Yes. Yeah. Oh. Mm. So is it possible that a person shows arrogance with some people and in some instances? Right. That's not what it's talking about here. Right. When we talk about rejecting the truth, like we're talking about people who know the truth. Like in general, when we talk about Islam, that's what is being discussed here. No, not just being arrogant toward an individual or toward a particular group of people. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this which is still wrong. There's no doubt, right? Like we should never feed those those seeds of arrogance where even in the moment where we might feel better. Those things that we should avoid. Yes, it can. I don't know how often that happens, but like usually that's the gateway, right? So that's the gateway into hating a group of people. So I remember we lived uh, we lived in Stanton, so it's like where 64 and 81 meet. It's like in rural Virginia, like where Shenandoah Valley is. And my wife went to go pick up a weighted blanket. There's this woman who used to sell handmade weighted blankets, and she went to go pick her up, and she's like, I noticed some of the political signs out in your things. Like, don't you have a problem with Muslims? She was like, no, you're a good one. So, so the thing is one. The problem is like I agree with what you're saying. Is that sometimes my perception of one person can expand to a whole group of people, and that's what I mean by it can become a great gateway. Um, but sometimes it's like if 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 I understand that my problem is with this person, that's very different than someone who might drive into like you know what I mean like they might have had the same experience as my wife and be like I hate all white people, right? That's a very different experience than saying like all white people are racist versus saying that no she's she's racist or like she has a problem. uh, hmm that is arrogance, but is this the type that will enter a person into hellfire? No, right? Yes, yeah. It, and the thing is like these are things that are they're very dangerous because that that can also become a gateway. Right? It went from an individual, it can go to a group, and now it can start into how we view and how we deal with ourselves, and when information comes to us, and how we deal with that and how we reject it. So one can lead to the other for sure, but and may Allah protect us. Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's stereotypes that exist that are out there, and sometimes it's easy to fall into those stereotypes. Yes, Ahmad. Yes, like general arrogance. But you know, if I the reason that I don't say it's the same is because, like she had mentioned, it's very easy for us to fall into stereotypes and how we deal with other people and how we view them. Um, saying that, like in general, like why do stereotypes exist? And some of them are true, right? It doesn't mean like en masse. Like, does it apply to every single individual of that particular group? No, not necessarily. But it like there has to be an element of truth there. Otherwise, the stereotypes just don't come out of nowhere. Um, the problem is like if we go in to like dealing with someone with what with the assumption that that stereotype applies to this individual without giving the individual a chance. Yes. So so the the thing is with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ما انتقم عن نفسه. Like he never took revenge. Right? So even if it was there, there's no there's no way like it was manifested or for us to even visualize or to see it. Because like I said, hating someone is fine, but is it healthy? It's not. Right? It's not healthy to be like being angry is fine, but always being in a state of anger, that's not right. These things aren't there. These traits are ones that exist and they might not be problematic, but they're also at the same time not healthy for our hearts. Like these are things that we should always try to scrub and remove so that they don't fester and they don't grow. Yes. No. The Prophet ﷺ, he himself was an example of worship and how that is to manifest. And that could manifest in his relationships and his dealing with others. It could manifest in his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his wives, with his family, with his friends, when he was in different situations, whether it be in legal situations or whether it be in governing situations. That's how he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. Even when Aisha radiallahu anha described it, it kind of Quran. Like he was a walking, talking Quran. He was a manifestation of the Book of Allah. He was a manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws and regulations. And even when people spoke ill of him and people spoke down to him, how did that affect him? Right? So when we talked about praise, how do you guys think the companion, every time the Prophet was around, how do you think the companions reacted or dealt with him? Like, just like extremely respectful, extremely respectful. And I'm drawing a much lower or lesser parable, but think of somebody famous who you want to see. What are some things that we do? Like we make efforts just to be around that person, right? Just what did they say? What did he do? What was that he ate? What did he mention? This is how they were constantly with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And why? Because he was deserving of that. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one else is. He was sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they would be excited just to be near him, just to be around him, just to hear him. Like just slight movements. Just imagine being so hyper focused on someone. How aware would we be? Because if we smiled or we frowned or we scowled, how people would react and how they would deal to that. And this is how they were with this Prophet. Like they would do something and then look, right? Right? They'd be like, okay, is he happy? Is he sad? Is he upset? Like, you know what I mean? Like they would just wait for a reaction from him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine the infinite patience that this man had, salawatullahi wasallam, knowing the people around him and how they would react to every single twitch of the eye, right? Every single frown, every single smile. And the amount of patience that he needed to have and self-control that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam needed to express to make sure that people didn't misunderstand the religion because he knew the responsibility that he was carrying forward sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes we overlook that. Like we don't even think about that. Like the heaviness of the responsibility of in every single reaction and every single interaction on how much weight all of that carried, and the number of people that were constantly like, you know, just imagine, you know, being around him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how they would say that we wouldn't look away from him just like we wouldn't look away from the beauty of the moon. Like they were just that enamored with him sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm sorry. It's extremely positive, charismatic. And we all know someone like this, right? We all have a friend like this. That when that person comes in, we're happy. You know what I mean? Like we're happy when that person comes in because they bring that positive energy, they bring that light, they bring that happiness, right? This is what we look for. But we also have that friend who we're like, oh my God, so and so's here, right? Right? Like, and unfortunately, many of us are like that. Like we're that friend that's like, oh my God, what is he gonna say now, or what is he gonna do now, or what is gonna happen now? I'm sorry. How? Right? It's because why does a person get to? Because they don't care about other people. Like they just don't. The only person they care about is who? Themselves. That's it. May Allah protect us from that. So here, Ghazali, he talks about like, okay, well, a person should keep striving. You should keep working. Keep making that effort. Like, keep trying to build your status. Keep trying to build your wealth. These are two very important things because this will help you in your journey toward Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Just make sure and be wary of falling into excess, falling into arrogance. Right? These are the dangers that are there. But if I keep doing those things, and if I understand the reason why I'm doing it, if I understand that, okay, no, I'm trying to better myself, I'm trying to make my ibadah more fulfilling. If I have this type of car, or if I have this type of home, or if I live this far, or you know what I mean, like, or if I live in this space, I'll be able to live in peace, in tranquility, and I can worship Allah Subhanahu wa Taala more effectively. Then I should strive for that. And many times, and I know there are exceptional situations, but if you have two people who are praying next to each other, and one person is worried about how they're going to pay their electric bill, and the other person has money in their pocket, how different is their worship going to be, right? One is just going to be so focused on what? Ya Allah, provide me and make a way for that electric bill to be paid, right? That's what the focus is going to be. That other person, if if he's worshiping correctly, what is he going to say? Ya Allah, make me more courageous. Ya Allah, make me more upright. Ya Allah, make me more generous. Right? There's so many more opportunities for him because he's not hyper focused on his problems. Right? He doesn't need to worry about his worldly problems. The only problem he cares about are where? So this is why we should strive for that. Like poverty and lowliness, these are not desirable. These are not things that we should seek. These aren't things that we should run after. But if we're put in a position where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away our wealth, or somebody causes defamation and says something about us, and the Prophet was not free of this, what happened with his wife, Aisha radiallahu anha, and waqit al-ifk, and how they accuse her. So sometimes, wealth and status are the same. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll give it to you, and sometimes He Azza wa Jal will take it away. Out of our own, like we don't have any control over it. So when things are good, we should take advantage of them. And when things are difficult, we should prepare. Yes. Yeah. So basically, what happened was they were on an expedition, and what would happen is that one wife would attend attend to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the expedition. She radiallahu anha was still relatively young on this expedition, so the camel, the way it got up and down, it was unaffected whether she was sitting. She was so slight that whether she sat on it or not, it had no effect. They stopped to settle the night. She radiallahu anha had a habit of sleeping. She went to sleep. In the morning, everybody's like, okay, let's go. She didn't hear the caravan getting ready because she probably slept a little bit away from the encampment. So they're like, okay, let's go. The camel got up, and they assumed what? She's in the hudaj. They assumed that she's in the structure, and they left. They would always have one person as a straggler, right? So how the encampments work is that the encampment would move as a whole, and you'd have one person who always stayed back. Why did that person stay back? In case something fell, in case somebody got lost, right. So that was his job, was basically to pick up after if anything got lost along, and or they left it behind. So he was coming, and he was like, I came across. She was sleeping. She was still sleeping. So he came across her, and he's like, I knew her before the ayah of hijab was revealed. Like I recognized her. So he saw her, and he was like, Yeah, Aisha, what are you doing here? What's going on? And she wakes up, and she's like, Where is everybody? So he puts her on his camel, and he walks, and he joins the expedition. And now some people, what do they see? They see a man and a woman coming alone after everybody has already left. So that was the unfortunate situation. Um, what about in worship? So there are two situations that he mentions, and we'll close with this, inshallah. He said that riyat, or showing off, for people alone, or I can have mixed intention, meaning that in the first situation, if my goal and I'm worshiping is only to please people or to increase my status with them, he says that this invalidates what? The action. This invalidates the action. So if a person is praying 2 rakat to show that he's praying and he's pious, then that prayer is going to be invalid. He says, but if I have a mixed intention, I do it for Allah and I do it for people, he says that this is minor shirk. And he says what happens with this is that he said this is worse. He said this situation is worse. So because if you look at the degree of severity of these actions, the worst action in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Is shirk. Less than that is this next one, shirkun khafi. And then below that is riyah. Yes. No, it doesn't. Right? Yes, absolutely. So out of these three, the only one that expels you from the religion is shirk. The problem with these two is that they can either invalidate all your actions, not your iman, but they can invalidate either all your actions or a particular action. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. We'll talk more next week, inshallah, on why is it that minor shirk is more dangerous. And Allah knows best. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Yes. Absolutely. How do we remove it? By not seeking the love of wealth and status. Sure. So a lot of the discussions that we had around this issue and the subject was that I need to first define for myself how much wealth and how much reputation do I need. And if I understand that this is the amount I need to survive, right, or to be comfortable, anything beyond that is going to have an effect on my heart. Once I become comfortable at that level and I understand what my role is and I understand that these are meant to be tools, it will have less of an effect on me. But that requires a lot of personal training. Yeah. Despising people, how do we stop? By interacting with them. Right? That's the best way. If I don't want to despise people, then I need to deal with people. And how do I deal with people? Like the problem many times we have when we deal with people is there are a few mistakes that we make. Some of us pity other people. The problem with pitying is that it's actually a type of arrogance. I have no problem helping other people, but I should never pity someone else. Because what I'm doing with pitying is that I will now do things for this person because I'm putting my feelings in front of their needs. And many times when we pity people, we don't empower them, we tend to enable them. So that's something that's very dangerous to fall into. And if I don't want to fall into that, I need to go with people who are, they might not be in as good a situation with me, and sit down and figure out, like, well, let's have a conversation, listen. I think that's the simplest way. It really helps put a perspective on how people get to where they are, and how, but if I realize, right, if I go into those circles, I could be like, man, I'm so much better than these people. Look at these losers, right? That's one vantage I can take away from that. The other vantage point I can take away is like, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me to not be in this situation, because I'm no different from them. And all it takes is sometimes one bad decision. Huh? No, it's not. Because I'm where my vantage is from me. What happened with them? Yeah, what happened with them is like, I just like I have no control over where I am, they had no control over where they are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happened to choose me. Right? There's no pity there. Because at that point I'm saying, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that designates where the people are. He designates their risk, He designates their status, He designates everything. But Allah has favored me. So what am I doing with those favors? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. But no. Yeah. No. So I think a lot of that comes from not just what they've been told. I think a lot of clergy, it's there's a bit of masochism that comes from the member, and it's like, because you sinned, you ended up like this. And I think for some people they take solace in being, like, chastised, because they believe that in chastisement is some type of retribution. It's weird. Um, I personally don't get it, but I've actually seen it in many spaces where it's like, all this guy does is yell at you, right? Like, all he's doing is chastising you. How is that making you feel better about yourself and your Islam? And it's like, no, this is the way it should be, because I guess when they feel that they're being chastised, it's some type of expiation. I don't know. I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, and there's a lot of twisted ideas on, like, poverty, and how poverty is something to strive for, and, like, you should abstain from, no. Yeah, so it's also a misconstrued idea of what zuhud is. Like, zuhud is like asceticism and staying away from the dunya, but the people don't realize, like, zuhud is not here, right? It's here, and that's where the misunderstanding comes. It's like, it's not how much stuff do I have, is how does this stuff affect this, right? That's what it actually is. Yeah. Yeah. But I think we do. I think so. I believe people enjoy mercy. I believe people enjoy kindness. I believe people enjoy honesty. I believe people enjoy the truth. I don't think we live in a world where the opposite is sought after. I think it's sought after by a few people, but in general, if I walk into a Target, I'm going to trust that the product is clean, and the money I'm paying for it is what it's supposed to be valued at. I hope not. I hope not. Okay. Anyway, I hope you guys have access to it here. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. Yeah. Can I? Can I do what? Yeah, haram. It's impermissible. Because if I'm not fulfilling Allah's rights, what have I done? I've fallen into haram. If I'm not fulfilling others' rights, it's a right, right? I'm not talking about once. If I'm not fulfilling others' rights, I've fallen into haram. This last gauge, that's where it gets a little tricky, right? It's not necessary that I've fallen into haram, but I can say that I've definitely fallen into something makruh. And had I listened to my heart, I would have gotten rewarded. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's shirk khafi. That's what we're gonna talk about, inshallah. Because we become so unaware of it. That's why. And Allah knows best. Jazakumullah khair.